Welcome back to our Screen Junkies Comic-Con coverage. I'm Roth Cornet. Good morning, Dan Murrell.
Good afternoon?
Good evening.
I don't know. My head is swimming from all this Aquaman footage.
You were just in the massive 2-hour...
He just schooled us.
I didn't even take it in. I just tried to plow right through it and talk about the trailer. You were just in the massive 2-hour Warner Brothers panel for us. Thank you for doing that. You're a trooper.
Of course. No, it was fun. It was a good time.
We're going to talk about the Aquaman trailer that was released, some of the footage that wasn't released that Dan did get to see, Shazam, Wonder Woman, all of the good stuff. First, let's talk about that trailer that was released. I think our unified, Joe and I watched it together, and I think on 3 different occasions at the same time went, yay!
Yep.
Fun! So I think...
I yelled, "Those men are riding sharks," so I'm true. I'm very happy.
They were indeed.
Yep.
I will say this, it's not my favorite trailer that was released today. That said, there wasn't a single one that I didn't like in its own way. This looks like a very... Look at that. They're riding sharks.
Look at
This
Manta.
is like a very fun DC movie, certainly tonally distinct. Dan, what was your take in the room? What did it feel like in the room?
I mean, the fans were eating it up, and I think really that went for just about everything in the Warner Brothers panel. They really brought stuff that the fans loved. But this and Shazam, the fans just were all about it. And I think, you know, James Wan in the interview portion of the panel was saying it was important for him. He said, "There's so much superhero stuff out there that I needed to make this film feel different." He said, "This is more like he considers this more like a sci-fi fantasy film than a superhero film."
Yeah, absolutely.
And that seemed to be the way that DC was going with everything that they were doing. Patty Jenkins talking about Wonder Woman. 1984 was saying this movie's not more of anything. It's a new movie. It's another movie in the series, but it's not just more of what you already had. Shazam, which we saw, obviously leaning into the comedy thing. I think this is the pivot that we kind of thought as far as DC was going, is taking these films and, you know, keeping them under the umbrella of a universe, but making them their own things instead of going for what seemed like for a while one similar tone across all of their different franchises. So this is kind of what we saw laid out in Hall H today, I think.
Joe, you're our DC expert that's here. So
I'm the best of... It's Joe, the best of what's left.
Joe, you were walking by. As you were filming.
Joe, you're here to tell.
Are you also brief?
You are. You're the. So, what do you take away from this?
Look, I even beyond Aquaman, Momoa's been my favorite part of. He was my favorite part of the Justice League. I like walking around and yelling "my man" and fist bumping with people. I think that's fun. It's the best possible way to, I think, take a character that people have shoehorned in as a Super Friends joke. There's lots of great Aquaman comics. He had a hook for a hand for a long time, and like, he was really cool. But the overall take for Aquaman is he talks to fish, and he's really stupid. So I think this is the best possible way to be like, no, Aquaman is cool as hell, and you want to drink a beer with him. But even beyond Aquaman stuff, I just like weird underwater stuff.
Yes.
That is my favorite. That is maybe one of my top 5 favorite weird genres of film, is just weird underwater stuff. And we had people riding giant sea turtles. We had people riding sharks. When I first heard
I love it.
When I first heard about this movie, I was like, I want it to be crazy. Like, I want someone to use eels as nunchucks. I want it to be so insane, and I think that's what we're getting.
It really looks, I'm so with you. That's exactly what I want out of this movie too, and it does look like that's what we're getting. And what's really exciting is that the 2 trailers that we saw, you saw Wonder Woman, that we saw, look like they belong to their own world. Like, there's no attempt to make Shazam and Aquaman feel similar, which I think is so appropriate and bodes very well for what DC is doing. I'm extremely excited. That said, let's talk about the Aquaman footage that Joe and I didn't see.
That's right. They had a second, it was actually kind of fun, they had a second trailer that the cast, they all turned their chairs around on stage to watch, because they're like, we want to see this too. A lot of it was some of the shots that you've seen in this trailer, some extended portions. 2 main sequences that were sort of extended. One of them is a sequence of Aquaman and Amber Heard's character in this kind of underground cavern. accessing this kind of this hologram that's going to give them information about the trident, which is going to be the sort of, I don't want to say MacGuffin, because we'll see, but the item of interest in this movie.
The McGilfin.
Yes, if you will. Thank you, Joe. But it's kind of interplay between those characters kind of showed how they're going to relate to each other. You know, she's all business, he's the smart ass. There were some good punchlines in there, but I don't want to give them away just because
that's good.
It'd be fun for people to find that out on their own. But it was kind of the interplay between those two. And then we got an extended sequence. You saw a few shots of it, of that kind of land sequence with Black Manta coming up, shooting the laser beams. They're running across the rooftops, and it's him and sort of others in those sort of Iron Man-esque suits, these mech suits, robo suits, running across the rooftops. Again, that's it's just very actiony. It felt a little bit like the Fast Five favela running across the rooftops, jumping around, blowing holes through things.
Oh, you know what to say.
And culminating in both of them, kind of jumping from this explosion and Aquaman laughing hysterically because this is what he does. This is what he enjoys. But the big shot that got, was the closer for this entire panel for Warner Brothers was, as we saw the sort of setup where he's going to Atlantis, he has to replace Patrick Wilson as the king. And, but the setup is basically that, Aquaman says Atlantis has always had a king. Amber Heard says, well, we need more. And the setup to that was like, well, what's better than a king? And cut to, it looks like it was taken off a comic book cover. It's Momoa, water flowing in the orange and green, the armor, the scales coming off it with the trident, the classic Aquaman shot. Boom, that's it. And the last shot of the panel, the last shot of that trailer. So it's more of an extended version of what people saw, but they also knew what the money shot was going to be. So we'll see when that shot makes its way out to the public at large. But that was a great move for Warner Brothers to know the shot that's going to get the super fans that are in that room excited.
That's
more
his
excited
getting out of
about
print shot.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're all on board for Aquaman from what I'm hearing here. There were no eels as nunchucks yet.
Yeah, I know they're there. I feel it.
They're happening.
In my
I
bones,
believe in it.
In my little fish bones.
Yeah. There's some people in this room even that had some questions about the look of it and the CG. Agree, disagree.
There's no air bubbles. No air bubbles.
Good.
No talking. No talk.
Because I was worried.
I was worried about that.
Just talk underwater.
Yeah.
Good.
Just talk normally.
As they should.
Yeah.
I know I'm usually the down on DC person or the person who talks calmly and quietly about The Dark Knight, the greatest comic book movie ever made, according to everyone. But a lot's happened in the last 20 minutes. We've been talking a lot about this week about how we feel like maybe a little detached lately because we cover this stuff all the time and it's hard to get genuinely excited about stuff. And watching that trailer on your laptop with you was genuinely the most pumped I've been about a pop culture thing that we report on in a long time. It was super fun. The moment I saw that they didn't try to make Black Manta cool, the moment I saw that they didn't try to give him a sick new redesign for a new era, and he just has a big dumb head, and he's just shooting lasers, I got so excited. So yeah, I'm pumped. This is gonna be cool.
I'm equally pumped. It looks like big, dumb, fun. All there for it. Shazam also happened. We're going to talk about Wonder Woman in a minute here, but that trailer was released, and it is essentially, as JT and Billy noted, it is essentially big with superpowers, which, thank you, and more, please. What was your take, Joe?
Dan, I think you summed it up really well as being these don't feel like they're trying to do this big, giant universe. They're just making. Oh, Roth, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. No,
that. I just Dan quoted your quote.
It's okay.
But they definitely just feel like these separate movies. These could have been on separate panels. It doesn't even. This also seems super fun. I think I agree. Big, maybe almost a G-rated, slightly younger Superbad with these two kids getting into hijinks, just with fighting crime instead of trying to have sex at a party. Maybe I don't know. You know what? That comparison doesn't work at all. I want to backpedal the Superbad comparison because now that I'm saying it out loud, it doesn't work. But yeah, I think this looks super, super fun. This is what I was expecting the first time I saw the behind-the-scenes footage that everyone was like, he looks like a big dumb cartoon. And it's like, yep. He is.
Oh, I didn't know what to make of this movie because I'm not. Other than I knew what Shazam was. I knew that he was a kid that turned into a superhero. But I don't really know much about the lore. And seeing the pictures, I was one of those people that was like, "What is this movie?" And this was my favorite of the DC stuff that they premiered,
Right on.
as far as the full trailers go. I thought this looked really funny. Again, I like that when you remove it from the context of the larger universe. And again, I think it's smart to focus on these as individual movies. That's coming at this. You have the shot of the Batarang, so you know that it's in a universe where Batman exists, but it's not so tied to that universe.
You
And
get the I think there was a Superman newspaper clipping or something.
yeah,
like that.
there's different nods and stuff, but it's going to be its own thing.
It's a light touch.
It's a light touch. I thought it was funny. I like the setup. I like how these characters interact. Zachary Levi came out and was as carefree as he was drinking a Guinness that he said Jason Momoa gave him backstage.
Nice.
And hanging out. This was something that I didn't know. There he is. I took that picture.
I know,
No,
you were
had
sending
these.
us some great
That's
pictures.
Can we bounce it out and say Roth took it since I...
No, I'm happy.
feel
I'm
bad.
happy to be misunderstood as Dan. If there's anybody I want to be mistaken for, it's Mr. Dan.
This was the movie that I came away from.
Or the Queen of
having
England.
the Queen's good too.
Queen's really
I had no take on, and I came out of it really excited to see this. So
I'm into it. I think that DC has done its job at this Comic-Con and introduced. I mean, I am curious, and I want us to talk about Wonder Woman, but also address the idea that everything that they brought out, with the exception of Godzilla, which we'll talk about in a separate video, does have sort of a light, fun tone. They didn't talk about the Joker spin-off movie. They didn't make any Batman announcements. They just sort of stayed focused and stayed the course with what they had. And I think they did a really good job of it and delivered the message of like, hey, we're gonna give you some movies that you're gonna love.
It also doesn't feel like a studio note.
Yeah.
Like it does. None of it feels forced. Like none of it feels like a Justice League rewrite where someone was like, "We need more quips." Like,
Yeah.
It just feels like they let filmmakers tell the story that they wanted to tell, which
Yeah.
I don't know, was really cool.
Yeah. Into Shazam, we didn't get to see any of Wonder Woman, which is a bummer, but you did.
there wasn't much of Wonder Woman to show. It actually seems to be from the same sequence that we've seen the pictures of Steve Trevor from in a mall.
In the Starcourt Mall.
That's
And they're not
where-
telling us how he's
They're
back.
not. They asked that. Of course, when it came time for fan questions, that was the first thing that
Sure.
came up, and Chris Pine said, "I can't say anything," and Patty Jenkins just said, "We're excited for you to find out, and it's a really important part of the movie." But that's all they said about Steve Trevor. But they showed, it was maybe 30 seconds of footage that they had. It's Wonder Woman. She's in like the food court of the mall. This looks completely different from the last movie, and that's sort of both Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins both said, this is not, as I think Gal Gadot said, it's not a sequel in the sense of like it's the last movie again. She's like, this is its own thing. It's the second movie, but this is its own movie. Patty Jenkins said, I'm not a fan of just doing more of something for no reason.
Great.
And she's like, this movie is not more of what you got in the last movie. The look for this was completely different. It was very bright. It looked like I remember an 80s mall looking like in the bright daylight when you had the skylights and everything. There's a little girl. There's a couple of 80s, goons. She pushes the girl back into a big teddy bear, gets the lasso out, is grabbing the goons. There's her Wonder Woman jump like kind of into the big atrium, but she's in full costume. So it is very, kind of weird to see Wonder Woman in full costume in like this full bright daylit 80s mall lassoing around. And then we saw a shot of her running down the street at super speed, which again could look really goofy. It was a mix of like, it didn't look like The Flash. It wasn't like slow motion.
Yeah.
It was regular speed. It was a little closer to how they made Superman run, if you remember, in the Richard Donner original.
Yeah.
Not quite as, let's say, dated as that, but that same kind of approach where it looks like a person running, but they're just running incredibly fast. And that's it. That's all they had. And they said, like, this is what we've got.
We've been shooting.
We've been shooting
for like
We're
4
still,
weeks.
Yeah.
So, but as far as the look goes and then the way that they're approaching it is what I took the most away from is they're very conscious of the fact that they're not trying to replicate the success of the original movie. For them, this is a completely different story. And even Patty Jenkins, when asked why the 80s, she said, I felt like the 80s was a great example of the best and the worst of humanity. And, you know, it was so much positivity in the air, and everyone thought it would last forever, but at the same time, there was darkness happening, and that's why she thought it would be a good time to revisit why Wonder Woman would revisit humanity at this point, was the fact that there was this so much positivity, but at the same time, so much darkness.
That's interesting. I mean, I wonder what she means by positively, like here in the maybe affluence or the desire for affluence,
She
or
said
the feeling that you could have things.
It was a time for many people, you know, on the surface at least, of wealth, of money, of a positive outlook, but, you know,
thinking that every generation would do better than the last.
Exactly. And she said, you know, what we didn't know then and that we know now is that there was an underside to that. And that's what she's interested in exploring, and why they chose this particular time period. So,
well, everything that we have talked about today, I am excited for. I think that Warner Brothers came out this year and didn't have not that they're in competition, but didn't have Marvel there as well today. And I think they did a really good job of selling the slate of DC movies from what we've seen and from what you're telling us, Dan, from the panel.
I mean, even if I think Marvel had been here, I think
DC would have done a great job.
They knocked it out of the park. I mean, my big takeaway from this is they're doing the groundwork to really establish characters that I'm interested in. I always want to be interested. Like it's not going to take a lot. It's just going to take more than a QuickTime video in BVS to make me interested. Now I already want to see Henry Cavill's Superman interact with Shazam. I can't wait for that.
Yeah.
Like
he did. Zachary Levi did say, they asked him who would win in a fight, and he said, I think canonically, if you look back, Shazam is one of the only characters that could stand toe-to-toe with Superman.
Which will be amazing.
That would be awesome.
You think that he would fare well, so.
But why are they, well,
I don't know. Well, it's always who could win in a fight. It's never like who would be friendlier.
Yeah.
Rob, it's because they have a misunderstanding and fight each other and figure out and
who would
correct.
give the best hug?
Exactly.
Shazam.
Definitely
I think
Shazam.
Shazam
I kind of agree with that. I think they've done a really good job with this panel. Real quick, we're going to move on to what was my favorite trailer. As much as I really love these trailers, we're going to talk about Godzilla separately. Man, I love that thing.
Yeah.
Final quick thoughts from you guys on why they stayed, and I think it's a smart marketing move, but why they stayed away from any big announcements outside of what they had here today.
Looking back on it now, I think that Justice League was the closing of a chapter for them. And if I had to guess, you know, beyond things that we just don't know of as far as like the status of deals, actor availability, like those X factors that we don't know, just from the vibe in the room, it seemed like their purpose here was to sell with Wonder Woman, to obviously feature something that they know people love, but at the same time set that up as this is not backwards facing, this is forwards facing, and then to say, here are our new heroes, and let's talk about their adventures going forward. And I think that a lot of other things might have muddled that message.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I think there's enough skepticism around Joker projects and some of the other stuff, like how's it going to work, how's it going to connect, and things like that. And I think they really need to time that stuff well and wait until they've really got something to say, something to show, to just kind of bulletproof and armor up a little bit.
Yeah, 100% agreed. So that's it from the DC portion of the Warner Brothers panel, but we will be back shortly in just a few minutes. Or right now, if you're watching this and the other video is already available, just go right to it. Yeah. We're going to talk about Godzilla.
Ooh.
So that's happening.